How's it going, guys? Odds and Ends RC here. Today we're going to be building a truck out of the RC 4-wheel drive Blazer body. At this time they don't offer a truck, so you got to take the Blazer body, cut it, and make a truck of your own. I bought one of these bed extensions. You can buy several different lengths of it. I bought one to make a 12.6-inch wheelbase to fit the RC 4-wheel drive Trailfinder 2 long wheelbase chassis. Now, it isn't quite as long as what a long bed pickup truck would be. You can buy an extension longer than this, but that's the chassis I am working with, so this is the one I bought. I bought that. You can get it from shrinkrc.com. They sell all sorts of customizable stuff for these trucks. And I also got the cab back piece and the back glass. I used to get them. They used to be one piece together, but for some reason they're two separate pieces now. Now, these come with a little bit of work. Once you glue one of these on, you're going to have to do a little bit of body work to it. That's normal. You know, sometimes these will be a hair too big. Sometimes they'll be a hair too small, and you got to use some filler. And then if you can see the print on it, it's a little bit of a rough print. And that's pretty normal. You just have to do a lot of sanding, use some filler, some putty, a lot of filler primer. Just spend a little bit of time on it, and the more effort you put in it, the better it'll come out. As far as cutting these, basically you're following this line down from the back of the cab, and don't go off of this door line, because this door line curves in at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it has a curve to it. So if you parallel your tape to the door line, it's going to end up in a curve, and your bed's not going to glue on straight. So what I do, if you look, if I can get it to show up here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it to show up. On the inside of this body, it's about right here. I don't think I can get it to show up on the camera. No. But it comes all the way down to the edge. If you follow that line, that's a perfect line to cut. Like over here, I started at the back of the cab, and then I found that line down here on the backside, and I came down and I matched it. And that will give you a perfect line to cut by. You can use many different things. You can use a little hobby saw. You can use a Dremel if you got a lot of experience with a Dremel. You could keep scoring it with a knife and eventually break it. Whatever you're comfortable with using. I'll probably use my hobby saw if I can find it. It's a little X-Acto hobby saw. But just slowly take your time. Just follow the edge of that tape. Just keep cutting and sawing and whittling, and eventually you work your way through. What you want to end up with is your cut will kind of end up level with this edge. This edge here gets glued on to this edge here, and that's all one straight edge. So if you follow them lines that are molded on the inside, every body I've had 4 or 5 of these bodies, and they've all had this line. I know you probably can't see it. Let's see if I can zoom in. There. I think you can see it a little bit. You see that line? It's molded in there. You want to follow that line, and then it'll give you a perfect cut. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it off camera. In case I screw it up, then you guys won't know. But I'll be back in a few. Alright guys, got her cut in half here. The magic of editing. Turned out pretty good. I ended up using a hobby knife on the back side. I kept scoring that line. And kept scoring the line and scoring the line. And then I would take the knife, flip it over, and use the dull edge, and it would kind of dig out the line. It worked good for me, but like I said, the hobby saw would probably work the best, but I couldn't find mine. But whatever you're comfortable with. So ended up with a nice flat, even surface, and bed fits on there pretty good. Take you like once you get done, take you a sanding block. I just got a little block of wood, and I think I got like, I don't know, 220 or something like that on here. 220 grit sandpaper. Just kind of knock off your burrs and sharp edges. Take a knife and just kind of get rid of your shavings and stuff like that, so that bed piece will fit in there good. And that just fits in there just like that. And when I go by, I try to get this body line here. I try to get it pretty straight when I glue it. If you can see, you know, it's a little shorter up here than the bed side. I mean, you're gonna have that. You're just gonna have to do some sanding and some filling and some primering to get that to level out. That's just kind of the nature of the hobby. You know, it takes a little work. The more effort you put into it, the better it'll look. I'm gonna use some CA glue. I'm into airplanes also, so I have a lot of CA glue sitting around. Like, I think this is a medium. You can get this at any hobby store, Hobby Lobby, places like that. Works great on this plastic. I've had real good luck with it. And then I also have the accelerator. When you spray that on this glue, it instantly hardens within seconds, and that makes a hard job turn into an easy job when you have both of these. But before you put the glue on, kind of rough up the surface that you're sticking it to. You know, make sure, use a little piece of sandpaper or something. Make sure the glue has something good to stick to. I've used epoxy before, like a 5-minute and a 15-minute epoxy. That also works good. My only complaint on it, it's a little harder to sand. It's kind of gums up the sandpaper. And when I use the glue, I kind of use it as a little bit of a filler too. If you got uneven gaps and stuff like that, you can put it in the gaps, and then it sands off real good with sandpaper. So that's why I use the CA glue. Back of the cab, it's kind of the same story. This is going to end up, and get stay in there. End up going something like that. I'll glue it, and then I'll use some little clamps and tape and whatever I have to get it to stay in place while I'm gluing it. But, you know, if it don't quite fit in there right, do a little more sanding. If it fits in there a little loose, use a little heavier on the glue. It don't have to be perfect, just get as close as you can. And then this window piece, it's 3 separate pieces, and it sandwiches together this clear piece of window. It'll also go on top of that. So just kind of test fit everything first before you start gluing. Just make sure it's gonna work. For some reason, if you got off, you know, a little bit on your cut, and your bed's kind of angled down a little bit or something like that, it's not that big a deal. Don't worry. Just take a sanding block, you know, and just keep sanding. You know, sand up here, keep sanding until you end up with it sitting level. It's not the end of the world. But when you're done, you know, you just want the whole body to sit kind of level and, you know, work together. But I might get some glue on this, do a little sanding and trial and error, and we'll come back and see where I'm at. Alright guys, got all the pieces glued on. Started doing a little body work on it, and it's starting to turn out pretty good. Basically, kind of glued this in with CA, and then up here I clamped it, and then across the bottom I ran a piece of tape all the way across the bottom, kind of squeezed the sides together to kind of hold pressure on it while I glued it, and just put a thick bead of CA on the inside of the body on the edge, and stuck it in there and centered it out, glued it, and then sprayed it with the activator. Turned out pretty good. Put a little bead of CA on the inside, and then I'll probably come back with a thick layer of epoxy just to kind of give it a little extra support. I went ahead and I filled in these holes, the body mounting holes. I used CA glue and filled them in, and I don't use the screw holes to mount the body. I'll show you that later, but I just went ahead and filled them in because I don't like messing with taking screws in and out to take the body on. And here I filled it in, and I used a little fine file, hobby file, and I just kind of ran that back and forth to get the groove back in it. It's turned out pretty good. Got a couple little pinholes I need to hit with some putty, but other than that, it's about ready for primer. And then once I prime it, I'll kind of detail it a little better. I sanded off the little door lock thing. I don't like the looks of it. And when you two-tone paint these bodies, it makes it real hard to do the tape line. It gets in the way. So I just went ahead and just sanded it off. As far as that goes, it's about ready for some primer. You gotta do a lot more sanding, but got all the major work done. And then the bed, got it lined up good, glued on real nice. Didn't have any issues with that. Like I said before, these pieces you glue on, the extension pieces, they're pretty good, but you gotta do some detail work to them. It was probably a 32nd of an inch on each side. It was too skinny, so I had to slowly build it out to get it even with the bedside. First of all, when I started out, I took CA glue and I blobbed a bunch on here, and then I took a spreader, just a card I had laying around. Then you kind of hold it up against your bedside, and then you just rake that super glue down, kind of rake it, and you're building a layer. You're building this up. Like I said, it was too thin, so we had to build it up to match the rest of the body side. And I got this idea from the Scale Builders Guild. He had mentioned he'd done this before, so I tried it, and it works really good. I usually do it, and then I'll spray it with the activator, let it harden, and then I'll run a sanding block and kind of see if I have high or low spots, just kind of match the bed and keep going back and forth. And then I had to do it about 2 or 3 times, and I finally got pretty happy with it. And once you get it close, then you can start using some filler. I used just regular Bondo. You can get it from any auto parts store. It works pretty good for just getting your last little bit, getting it to level out. And then also, if you just need just a little bit, some pinholes and stuff, the Tamiya putty works great for that also. But just in the sanding stage now, before I primer it, you have to get rid of all the smoothness. Paint won't stick to smooth plastic, so just take you a block and some, probably end up, since this is the primer stage, I'll probably end up with 250 to 400. It doesn't really matter. Just give something for the primer to stick to, and kind of work over the whole body with a block. You'll notice some, forming imperfections in the way the body was molded, high spots, low spots. And I take this step to kind of knock most of that out. There'll be some weird stuff around the tail light you can see. I just kind of sand that out, and, primer will fill in a lot of it, but not all of it. And then any sharp edges, like there'll be usually sharp edges inside the wheel molding, knock them out with some sandpaper. Your paint doesn't stick to sharp edges. Get rid of all that in this step. And then, your body lines, like up here, and then your edge. I kind of round them off right before I'm ready to primer it. I'll round it off with a piece of sandpaper, because, the real truck doesn't have sharp edges, and it just makes it easier to paint and stuff. You don't have to worry about having a sharp edge where the paint can get knocked off of it real easy. So just kind of dull all the lines out. And one of the last things to remember is, like, the tailgate. This is a Blazer tailgate. The pickup tailgate doesn't have this line going across it. So I'm going to sand that out, sand it flat, get rid of that. Probably get rid of this little deal that goes around the tailgate handle. Usually on the pickups, I think the handle is down a little further, but I'm not worried about that much. I'll probably just leave it where it is. I'm going to sand this out for sure, and probably get rid of this molding around here. And I'm going to fill in these holes because I'm not going to use them. But biggest thing on these bodies is this stuff like this. See how it doesn't fit? It's real tight, and you got to kind of spread the body apart to get it to fit in there. You want to sand on all this stuff, get it to where it fits looser. Temporarily mount your tailgate hinge, get it to where it's, the way it's going to be after the hinge is mounted, and then kind of sand on it. Just keep messing with it, get it to where it fits a little looser. On a lot of these, I end up gluing them in. I don't even use the flip down tailgate, because all it usually does is just scratch the paint on the edges and chip the paint off. But remember that, get it to fit loose. And also, on the Blazer, your gas cap's back here, and I went ahead and filled it in, because on the pickup, it's not back here. Usually it's up here somewhere. So before I filled it in, I took a piece of paper, kind of laid it over it, and then took a pencil and scratched over it, and it marked, kind of give me an idea of what size it was and how far down from the body line it was. And then later on, I can cut this out and kind of use it for a template to, redraw the new one and carve it out. But yeah, got all that. Another thing, this is with any body, but just get everything to fit right before you paint it. Like this hood here, see, this hood does not fit whatsoever. It's hanging over the front. It's sitting, it's not even, I could squeeze it down in there and kind of get it to fit, but it's still hanging over in the front. You're going to have that. You just got to keep sanding and filling with it. Get it to where, usually I got to take some off these edges. Get it to where it fits in there loose. Sometimes you got to do a little whittling inside the hole inside here. The edge of the hood's kind of hitting in that hole in there. And then sometimes I'll have to sand off the bottom of this edge to get this hood to sit lower. It just takes a lot of fiddling. If you notice on a lot of these builds you'll see on YouTube and stuff, the hood never fits right. It's always sticking up in the air or something weird with it. It's just all in the amount of time you put into it. You just gotta sand and sand and sand and keep trial fitting. Temporarily fit your hood hinge. Once you get close, make sure it's going to shut right, you know, with the hinge installed. Same with tailgate. You know, do that to every single part that goes onto this thing. Whether it even be the windshield, make sure the windshield fits before you paint it. Just the grill. With any body, really, any hard body, you just kind of have to do that. It's just the way it is. But I'm about ready for the primer step. I'm gonna get everything sanded and then test fit everything, get everything sanded down, and then we'll shoot some primer on it. And after I do that, then we'll come back on and I'll go over it. Well, guys, I think I'm ready for paint. After a couple evenings of sanding and priming and getting all the little weird defects out of the body and everything, about one more once over it with some fine sandpaper, and I think I'm ready for color. Let's see, here's the cab. My holes I filled in down here turned out pretty good. Pretty happy with that. See, kind of rounded these edges a little bit so they're not so sharp. No lines showing anywhere, nothing back here. This window, I'm going to decide I'm going to glue that in later. That way I can paint the trim around the window. It'd be a lot easier to paint and deal with. And I can just paint it and then glue it in later. Probably use some epoxy. This side, looking good. There were some weird lines coming off here and going up. I had to sand out. They were kind of goofy. I got them as good as I possibly could. It should look pretty good once I get some color on it. This magnet up here, glue that magnet in before you get a bunch of paint on it. Because if you get a bunch of paint down this hole and then try to glue that magnet in, it won't want to fit. Like, I've been primering this thing, and I just primer the areas I need. Just kind of focused up here and then down here and on the back where all my glue joints and everything were. Because if you get a bunch of primer up in these tops of the doors, you kind of lose the detail in it. And it's almost impossible to sand out. So if it doesn't need any work, don't even spray any primer on it. See, I got the bed here. It turned out really well. I was real impressed with it. Just kind of kept focusing on this line here and tried to keep it even and straight. The front of it. The other side. Real happy with that. The inside, I didn't worry too much about it. I got the sides smooth where you can't see the lines on both sides. They're going to get painted. But as far as the bottom, usually on these I'll cut out a piece of rubber, thin rubber, or a piece of styrene, and just cover up the whole bottom of the bed with it. Kind of make a new bottom of the bed. And that way it hides all these holes and everything. And, you know, plus this piece you glue on doesn't have the little panel lines in it that doesn't line up with the bed. So I just kind of hide it all with a piece of styrene or a piece of rubber anyway. But yeah, pretty happy with it. Just kind of everything you got to do to make one of these, turn one of these into a truck. Just thought I'd make a video on it, kind of show everybody. There's a few videos out there, but they don't really go into detail and, you know, exactly how everything works. That's somewhat how it's going to look whenever, you know, I get it put together. Haven't decided if I'm going to bolt this to that, kind of space it apart and bolt it, or what. I haven't decided yet, but we'll talk about that on the next video. I'll go over, get the paint job done, go over that, and then talk about how I mount it to the chassis. Also, I'm going to be putting this together in a video. It's RC 4-wheel drive, long wheelbase trail finder 2. That's what I needed for this body. But I'm not going to bore you with the whole video putting it together. I'll just kind of go over some trouble spots with it and make a little short video out of it. But yeah, let me know if you liked it, or if you guys have any suggestions or tips or tricks you guys do with these truck bodies, let me know. I'm always willing to learn. But yeah, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.